name's Hazem, and today we're going to learn about WHMIS. And you've heard of WHMIS. So, WHMIS stands for Workplace Hazardous Material Information System. And why do we have WHMIS? Well, WHMIS ensures that you, as an employee or a worker, have all the information you need to work with hazardous material. And it applies to all suppliers, importers, distributors, and users of hazardous products that are stored in the workplace or used in the workplace. And it can protect you from injury. One key thing is the injury from or effects from exposure can take years to appear. So sometimes you get exposed to a chemical and it causes, say, a tiny quantity doesn't hurt, but over time, quantity builds up in your blood or in your cells or in your liver, and 5 or 10 or 20 years down the road, something happens. Or it causes a slow genetic mutation, and the effects take a long time to appear, and by then you're retired, and then you're getting sick, and you don't know why. And so we have to protect you. And how do we do that? Well, first of all, it starts with the supplier. Somebody made the chemical and they put a label on the chemical that says what it is, and then they create an MSDS, material safety data sheet. And the material safety data sheet tells us everything we need to know about the chemical. And then the employer buys the chemical and they educate the workers about it. And now the workers know how to protect themselves from the chemical. So the supplier must classify their product per the hazardous products regulation and then label the product with a label and provide the data sheet and then update the data sheet whenever there are changes to the product or when something new is discovered. So a product that might originally be safe might be low hazard. You might find out a year or 2 or 5 years from now that it's much more hazardous than they expected, and they have to update the label. The employer is responsible to educate and train workers on the hazards and ensure that hazardous products are labeled and prepare workplace labels and prepare safety data sheets. So they can take the data sheet from the manufacturer and make sure that it's available on site. And then they must also ensure there are measures in place to protect worker health. And then the worker is responsible for participating in education and training to the point where they understand hazards of the product, how to protect themselves from the hazard, what to do in an emergency, and where to get further information. Workers must also participate in identifying the hazards and using PPE. So let's take a look at the hazard groups here. So there are, we start out with like a group and then a class and then a category. So a group, so there are 3 groups, and they are physical hazards, which are dangerous because they can cause a fire or an explosion, or they can be flammable. And then we have health hazards, which are make you sick, and then we have environmental hazards. So we don't really put environmental hazards on the label because they don't affect the worker, but they do affect society. So you should be mindful of environmental hazards. Now, a product can be a physical hazard and a health hazard at the same time. So We're going to next take a look at all the different types of physical hazards.